Welcome to the Burnout to Lit Up podcast. I am your host, Erica Del Pozo, occupational therapist, certified health coach, CEO and founder of Joy Energy Time, Miami Girl, and Pineapple Lover. In this podcast, we provide the resources on how to deal with stress, burnout, and anxiety, how to get energized, find true satisfaction and alignment in your life, and more. You will learn how to slay your burnout beast and go from burnt out to a lit up life. Let's do this. Welcome to the Burnout to Lit Up podcast. I'm your host, your girlfriend, your BFF, Erica. Okay, I don't know why I just said my name in Spanish. Like, sometimes that happens. I'm not gonna lie. And like, sometimes it's just how I say things. I wasn't planning on that, but let's just roll with it. Yeah, like, especially my last name. I went over my last name once. It's weird. But anyway, I came up with a new Instagram page called The Traveling Cubanita. So if you add an ita at the end of, or ito at the end of a word in Spanish, it just means little. Like, I'm the traveling little Cuban woman. Ita, because I'm a female. So yeah, I just made that page for fun. Like, I'm not really on it a lot. I'm not really actively trying to grow it. It's just like something fun for me to share my travels on. I mean, like, I have the filters and it's polished. It's like one of those traveling pages that, you know, it's like to the T, polished with like the theme and all that. So I'm making it that, but again, it's not really like a big deal. If you're going to follow me on Instagram, then I prefer you follow me at joy.energy.time, because that is the page, that's like my baby. That page is associated with this podcast, my brand, my business. That's where I connect with other healthcare professionals. That's the page I'm on every day. I'm posting every day, sometimes multiple times a day. That's the platform where I want to connect with others and serve people. So yeah, follow me there. Okay, I'm going to get into like two things that are on my mind before we go into this really special episode. By the way, I'm not leading the interview in this episode. My husband is. So I'll go into that in a second. But first, this just popped into my mind. Like, it's just so cool to learn another language. I'm blessed because I grew up speaking Spanish because I'm Cuban American. But like, isn't it just cool to learn another language? When I was in Europe, people know all these languages, and I get it because they're close to other countries. It's easier, or it's perceived as easier. It's necessary. You know, like when I was in Norway, I learned that their English is better than mine. Like, they have learned English from a very young age. So in Europe, it's a little different, but I think it's cool that Americans can learn, or when Americans want to learn other languages, even when you don't have to. It's fun. Like, what a cool conversation point. Like, yeah, I know fluent French or fluent Spanish or fluent Arabic. Like, I think it makes you really well-rounded. It's just fun. I like learning. I like that I can speak two languages, and I would love to learn more. I feel like my Spanish is not fluent, and I speak it on a regular basis at the moment, but I want to really fine-tune it. I want to learn the grammar. I want to like really get into it and learn another language after that, which, you know, I there's people that speak 10 languages. I mean, that would be amazing. Anyone can do it. It's just fun. Like, so if you're going to do something cool and fun this summer while you're at the pool or at the beach, I've heard of not Rosetta Stone. Like, obviously there's that one, but I've heard of another one called, it starts with a P, Prim something. Oh man, I don't know. I'm going to have to look it up and put it in the show notes now because I don't want to leave you hanging. Prinslers? Oh God, I'm like, something like that, okay? But I've heard great things about this language thing, and whenever I want to learn another language, I think I'm going to, or, you know, I could probably use it to really advance my Spanish, but I definitely check it out if you're interested in learning another language. I've heard great things about it. So at the time of this podcast recording, Mike and I, Mike's my husband, we are getting ready to move out of Florida. We're moving in less than 2 weeks, and we're going all the way to California. We're driving there. We're making a month-long road trip to California. And we're doing this because we are going to do travel therapy. Travel therapy. If you know about it, we finally decided that we're going to do it. It's the time. We have no house, no kids, no drama. So it's perfect time. If you haven't heard of it, it's basically you're with an agency and they help you find 13-week assignments around the country. So you can really see the country in such a cool way because you're working and traveling. They give you a stipend for housing. They cover your health insurance. All this fun stuff. Maybe Mike and I will do a separate episode about that. But yeah, we're going to start that. So we are leaving Florida. We're going to drive to Pennsylvania in 2 weeks. So we're going to stop in Jacksonville. We're going to see some friends there, go to Savannah, Charleston. I've never been to Savannah and Charleston. I'm really excited. Going to Charlotte, going to Williamsburg. So last time I was in Williamsburg, I was 9 or 10 years old. I had my Felicity American Girl doll. Guys, remember American Girls? I was dressed like Felicity, had my Felicity doll, and I couldn't be a happier kid. Those were childhood goals. And we were in Williamsburg for the 4th of July, and I was crying because the fireworks got canceled because it was raining, and I didn't want Felicity's hair to get ruined. Talk about first world problems, childhood problems. But yeah, I'm excited to go back to Williamsburg. We're going to Arlington and DC. Super excited about that. And we're going to Pennsylvania because Mike's family's from there. That's where he's from. So we're going to hang out with them for a little bit. His cousin is getting married. That wedding is going to be lit AF. I cannot wait. I know his family. They're super lit. So excited for that wedding. And then we're going to leave Pennsylvania or leave Philly, make a pit stop in Pittsburgh. Okay. I'm so funny, right? See some friends there, go to Michigan, see some family there, go to Chicago for 2 days, hang out with family. It's such a cool city. I've been there once. I like it a lot. And then from Chicago, we're entering the Twilight Zone because we will be driving from Chicago 8.5 hours into South Dakota. I'm not sure where again. Mike has gone over the itinerary with me 100 times, but I can't tell you where we're going. All I know is that we're going to see the Badlands and we're going to see Mount Rushmore. Really excited for that. And then from there, it's another Twilight Zone. I'm not sure where we're going. I think we're going to Deadwood. Is that in Montana or South Dakota? Oh my God, I don't know. We're going to this town that I think the show Deadwood was based out of, and man, we're getting into the country, okay? And then from there we're gonna go to somewhere in Wyoming on the way to Glacier National Park. So that whole time from Chicago to Glacier, I feel it's the Twilight Zone. I'm really excited for that part just because I do not know what to expect. I know what to expect in going up the East Coast because I've been up the East Coast, even though I haven't been to Charleston. I've seen a lot. I've heard a lot about it. I kind of know what to expect, but in this Twilight Zone in South Dakota, Montana, I have no idea. I'm going in with no expectations, going into it with complete openness, and wherever we are, I'm excited to meet new people, see new places, learn about new cultures. I'm ready for this. So then we're going to be in Glacier National Park for 3 days. And man, we're going to be tired, really tired. We're going to be hiking. Not only are we going to be tired from driving, because that's going to be like the longest stretch of drive from Chicago to South Dakota, and then again from like Dakota to Montana. It's going to be a lot of driving. We're going to be tired, but then we're going to be doing like 8-hour hikes because Mike is ambitious. So Glacier for 3 days. We're going to glamp it out, guys. So the Traveling Cubanita page, I'll be sharing a lot of that there. But yeah, it's just, I'm excited. I'm excited for all these new adventures. We're going to glamp it out a little bit, and then we're going to Seattle. I've had the pleasure of going to Seattle twice, and I absolutely love Seattle. Mike has never been there, so I'm sure he'll enjoy it as well. And then from there, we are driving to Napa because my friends are flying out to Napa. They'll meet us there, and we're going to have our 30th birthday celebration. I'm going to be 30 in September, so by the time we get to Napa, it will be like the middle of August. So it'll be an early birthday celebration for me and my best friend. It will be her birthday's in August, so we're doing a combined birthday thing with all of our friends, and that's going to be like the icing on the cake on this huge road trip, just ending it in Napa and getting to relax after all that hiking and traveling. And then we're going to start our travel placements there in California. So with travel therapy, you have to really be flexible, and you cannot plan too much because things change on you. I haven't even done travel therapy yet, but that's what I know. So we do not know yet where in California we will be placed, but so that's where I'm just gonna leave it. We have our state licenses for California, but we do not know yet. That comes closer to our start date. So our start date would be anytime after Napa. So we're gonna be on the road for a month, but don't worry, because a podcast episode will be coming out every Friday. I've been interviewing a lot of people, and we're scheduling all that out. So the show, we're not going to leave you high and dry. The show will still be here. The show must go on. And speaking of the show, I'm going to introduce Mike. So Mike is my hubs. Him and I did an episode few episodes ago, actually a long time ago, when the show first came out. But yeah, Mike, he's the behind the scenes guy. He does the editing. He edits the podcast. He built my website. Our website. And oh my God, he has a love-hate relationship with our website because it's WordPress. It's another story for another time. It's just, we're not tech people. So he's just God bless him, because he has put a lot of time and patience and dedication to making our website look awesome. And he edits the show and he uploads it. So he wants to be a part of the show a little bit more. So he wanted to do an interview. I'm like, oh, yes, go ahead. Take a little bit of load off me and be a part of the show. So he conducted an interview with Dr. Mike Masi. Dr. Mike Masi is a doctor of physical therapy, and we went to school with him. So, he went to school with him, but I was in the same school as an occupational therapist. And Mike and Mike are, they go back to what we all met in 2011, and they graduated together. Mike Masi is now in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he has the alphabet soup after his name. This guy is legit. He's into the body, into functional training, and he combines the art of and the practice of physical therapy with so many other cool things. He's what can't he achieve? He has all the letters behind his name to prove it. I know him personally. He's such a down-to-earth, fun guy, and he is beyond knowledgeable in his area of practice. So without further ado, here is that interview.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Burnt Out to Lit Up podcast. I'm your host today. My name is Michael. I'm Erica's husband, and I'm also founder and CFO of Joy Energy Time. It's a special episode today because it's my first episode, so I'm very excited about it. It's also special because we have an awesome guest. I'll get to him in a minute. and because we finally fixed our awful audio issues. So it's not going to sound like my guest here is 5 miles away talking through a Dixie cup attached to a string. So that's going to be good. So my guest today is Dr. Michael Masi, a classmate of mine from physical therapy school. So he's a doctor of physical therapy, orthopedic certified specialist, sports certified specialist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, certified in the International Society of Sports Nutrition, and a certified manual trigger point therapist, which lets him perform dry needling. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you for the introduction, Mike.
Yeah, cool. Great to have you. For those of you who are listening, this guy is an absolute expert in our field, and I'm really excited to have him on because he's like far and above the average physical therapist, him and his colleagues. Mike, if you could go into a little bit your background and also the companies you have started along with your colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about me from why I got into everything to begin with. I mean, my very first job was in a Gold's Gym, and I was a high school athlete. I played a lot of football, wrestling, things like that. Just working in a gym, I was always trying to better myself in my sport or help my team or whatever the case may be. And basically, towards the end of high school, had a falling out with my coaches, ended up not being on the teams anymore. And I was kind of lost in the gym, because I didn't have any goals. So I was meandering around, just kind of working out to work out. And then that eventually I started to envelop myself within those health and wellness and fitness circles and just learning more and more about the different styles and training styles of exercise. And I started working a whole lot more. I mean, I had all that extra time, I wasn't going to practice and whatnot. So I started spending way more time in the gym. Then I went into grad school. I went to undergrad, and I worked at a gym there as well. And pretty much because of my background, I was the most suited to answer any questions regarding just exercise. People trying, the typical questions you may get. How do I lose fat? How do I gain muscle? How do I, help this injury that I have? And honestly, I wasn't able to answer a lot of those questions. I didn't have the knowledge to answer most of them, and I acknowledged that. And so in college, I switched my career path to better answer those questions, to be into preclinical allied health, which helped me springboard into becoming a physical therapist. So then I went to grad school, and I just kept taking that to the next level. Currently, as you mentioned, I'm a sports specialist, orthopedic specialist, strength and conditioning specialist, sports nutritionist, you name it. Then I own my own business, and I'm a provider for the Charlotte Athlete, which is awesome. I mean, you asked me to tell you a little more about that. I basically have the Charlotte Athlete's like a group of highly credentialed sports doctors that specialize in treating athletes of all levels. And, we have doctors that specialize in various sports such as powerlifting, bodybuilding, Olympic weightlifting, CrossFit, youth sports for like off-season training for field sports, mm-hmm. golf, tennis, as well as the recreational gym goer. And we basically just want to help athletes recover quickly so they can be active and continue competing in their sport or progressing towards their goals,
Yeah. So you're the founder of Masi Fitness as well, right? And is that where you do more of your clinical work, or is that kind of more of a like a training thing, or what is that?
Absolutely. And so I have Masi Fitness. That's my business where I basically work with the strength sport athletes to help them recover from injury. And then from there, I recognize that a lot of people have different needs, So some of them, they want to continue training with me one-on-one for whatever reason. Some people just need some guidance with perhaps writing their programming, right? So I do a lot of remote training for them, in which case and some of these athletes are in other countries or they move to other states or whatever the case is, and I can still see their results in real time as they're awesome. Working out, and I can write their programming for them that way. Yeah. Others don't need to really me to hold their hand too much, and they just want more of like a template. So sometimes when I discharge them from my care, they go and they get like either a hypertrophy template or a strength template, and then they use that, and that carries them through months of training. And I don't have to, and then they can always use me as a resource, but they're not getting a personalized program written for them as if they would in the remote training. So yeah. Pretty much, it's mainly my Masi Fitness is mainly my business for rehab of the strength sport athlete. But there's a lot of training involved there. There's a lot of digital products that I'm selling. We're getting into e-commerce now. We also provide me and the other doctors from the sport doctors from the Charlotte Athlete are now starting to do continuing education. So all of that's done under my business, the Masi Fitness.
Awesome. Actually, it probably would have been important to say at the start, but Dr. Masi is based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So if anyone who's listening, you need advice, rehab, you need training services, look these guys up, because when you talk about excuse me, when you talk about the average physical therapist and what they know or don't know, Dr. Masi and his let's just call you Michael. It sounds weird to call you Dr. Masi. It sounds like
that's fine with me.
Yeah, it sounds like we're in suits, like at a business meeting.
So, right, yeah.
So Mike and I think it's three of our other classmates, right? It's Chad. Absolutely. and it's Andrew and it's Piero, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's like they've really all gone above and beyond the average physical therapist knowledge. Like they would run circles around the average PT clinically. So if you have a problem that's recurring and maybe you've sought out care in the past and you're trying to get this thing really taken care of, these guys are the ones who are going to know how to do it.
We have the oral training and within the residency programs, and we have a couple. So Andrew, Dr. Kennis went through a fellowship as well, and this is basically, this is I think the most value that we can bring is the knowledge of the sport. That's the biggest part of all of this. We have people who, they get injured and they may go and see their physician and they may get some imaging and it shows like degenerative disc disease, degenerative joint disease, or they get an MRI, it reveals like a herniated disc, a bulging disc, and this type of stuff is caustic to these people, this terminology or this imaging that shows these things, and these physicians see these people, they hurt themselves like maybe deadlifting or whatever, and they tell them, look, you got to stop doing this, or you have to stop running, or you shouldn't be squatting, or you're too old to do this, or whatever the case may be. We hear everything, and it's sad. It really hurts us every time we hear that, because that's not true. If you just had a little bit of the understanding of what their sport requires and the nuances of the movement of the sport, right? I think that you can really get around and you can rehabilitate a lot of these people to not only come back to do what they love to do, but maybe even do it better and avoid injury to like moving forward. So I mean, I had someone the other day with that exact situation. They came in, they had it was about a month ago, and they came in, they had a MRI revealing herniated disc. Their doctor said they had a script that said no lifting greater than 10 pounds indefinitely. And this is
I can see you looking at that like, what?
Right. This is someone who hurt themselves lifting 400 plus pounds in the gym, right? Like that was there, and now they can't lift more than 10. And they actually saw another therapist who, not to say, they were very, all good intentions, but basically, was telling them that they had weak hips and stuff like that. And this is, again, somebody who can lift 400 plus pounds multiple times. So to say that this person had a weakness was a little dubious. I think that that we just needed to teach him like more of the correct ways of lifting. But now what was more important is get him back to just managing his injury that he has currently, giving him the right education on what he should and shouldn't do during these acute phases, moving forward with lifting the way he should be, and then preventing injury, like moving and you can do that a million different ways. There's a lot of equifinality there, but I think that when we got him to the point, I got him to the point relatively quickly where he was deadlifting again with a decent amount of weight, and it was an emotional time, and I think he basically was super excited about that, and that's what's just super rewarding for me. Sure. I love to do that, and I think that if you find the right person, that person can help you. You know what I mean? That's you don't have to see somebody and settle for someone to tell you that you can't do the things that you like to do.
Yeah, for sure. And, people always talk about, when they go to doctors for certain medical related things, getting a second opinion, getting a third opinion. It's no different with the rehab world. I know as a physical therapist myself, I know what I don't know. And it's sometimes hard for a clinician to like refer out because that's like business you're turning away. But it's important to know that as a patient too, because, if you're not getting the results you want, you got to try someone else. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we learned just because now that I own my own business, and I mean, I've realized the value of referring people out more so now than ever. I mean, when you refer somebody out, that referral source really appreciates that. You create a great relationship.
Sure.
But you helped that individual it's immensely because you sent them to somebody that can help them more, and they're grateful for that. And it's really just a giant win-win-win all the way around. I mean, there's no reason not to do that. That if you see it as turning business away, then you may be looking at it the wrong. You're definitely looking at it the wrong way, but
sure.
you may be in this for the wrong reasons too. This is something that we're not. As a healthcare provider, I think you should be in this for the betterment of your patients and providing a quality service, not necessarily to make money first. I think if you do the former, the latter will come, and that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I had a question about because I follow you on social media. He's Mike's on Facebook and he's on Instagram. Really well, actually. I'm actually kind of impressed with your social media, posting and marketing and stuff. It's great. But it's like I see a lot of your clients on there sometimes, and I'm wondering because I know you're really into powerlifting. You've done competitions and stuff. Do you incorporate that stuff more into your rehab? Like if someone came to you who's maybe never done certain lifts before, but that some particular exercise might help them, do you kind of try to incorporate that into your care or?
Oh yes, 100%. I think that, and the reason for this is, this is funny because the people that know me really well are probably laughing when they hear this because I say this very often. But I do think, I wholly believe that powerlifting, conventional powerlifting, is the most rehabilitative, I guess the best rehabilitative therapeutic exercise. There's really nothing, when you hear the words like functional exercise and stuff, when you really break that down, what does functional mean? It's I think of it as what's going to help you do the things that you do on a daily day, right? So getting up off of a chair, picking things up off the floor, pushing things out of your way, opening doors, lifting things overhead. Absolutely. All the stuff that you do, and if you think of what getting off the floor is going to entail, that's going to be a lunge, right? If you pick something up off the ground, that's a deadlift. If you get off the toilet, get it out of your car, that's a squat, right? So in conventional powerlifting, it's three main lifts, which is the squat, the bench press, the deadlift, but then you also have four other giant lifts that are well integrated into a holistic program, which would be the overhead press, the carry, the bent over row, and the pull up, right? So these are all big multi-joint movements that I love to incorporate because that's going to be what's going to bring them back to their function, and it's also going to provide the right stimulus. Very often I'll get people referred to me who have seen a therapist in the past, and they'll tell me, I'll ask them, what worked for you, what didn't work, because I'm trying to get all the information I can. And sometimes they'll tell me their home exercise program, which may have consisted of them laying down for 5 or 6 or 7, 8 different exercises. Right. Meanwhile, they probably could have got a lot more of a stimulus just walking, because they're actually accepting their body weight. So I think about that sometimes, and I try and challenge myself to think about how I can get these people back to where they need to be. And a lot of it is how can you give them a stimulus to adapt to. And I mean, there's nothing like a good deadlift, a carry. There's really few things that I can think of that are better than that. So I'll have people that have never done that before doing that. And of course, I teach them how to do it. I find a safe way. But I have them definitely go through those motions, and almost everybody.
You get terrified looks when you break out the squat bar with chains, and you're they're like, what is going on here? What am I going to do?
Well, yes. So if you just saying the word deadlift to somebody who's never heard of it before, definitely you get some weird looks, and I think that
they just automatically assume they're going to have a compression fracture by the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the best part, sometimes you show the exercise and you're just like, this is what I want you to do. And then their eyes light up and you're like, and then, but what's interesting, what I love that, because the very next step, because usually if I'm introducing this to them, I'm like 90 or more % positive that this person's going to be able to do it relatively effectively.
Right.
And they just don't have the confidence in themselves. So I love that moment, because then immediately preceded by, or succeeded by, them doing it well and then being surprised. And then that is the most empowering thing to these people. Sure. When they do something that 7 seconds ago they thought that was going to break them in half, that is awesome. And no, it's not always a barbell and chains. Sometimes I'll get the dowel rod out first or whatever, and I rest them appropriately. But yes, there are those moments happen almost all the time, and I love showing my patients they can do way more than they think they can. Right. It's a very empowering moment.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the certified manual trigger point therapy, and how that pertains to dry needling. And for people who might not know what dry needling is, to be honest, I'm not really even that well versed in it. It's essentially well, I'll let you explain it. Go ahead and tell us what that is.
Yeah, of course. So, and it makes sense, because in Florida, where you're located, physical therapists aren't allowed to do dry needling.
Yeah, it depends on the state, so make sure you find out first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Most states were allowed to, and I think what it really comes into is our, for instance, in Florida, our Practice Act previously said that it had stipulations that we weren't allowed to puncture the skin, and I think that's in the process of being changed at the moment. I'm not sure where in that process it is, but it's soon we'll be able to, in most states, be able to do this, and in North Carolina we're allowed to do it, and it's essentially, dry needling is where you take a thin needle. There's no conduit to the needle, so you're not injecting or drawing anything from this person. You're just trying to provide a mechanical stimulus. So you're trying to actually put that needle in the muscle that you've implicated, right, with your movement assessment or your evaluation or whatever, right? So if you find a tight muscle, or if you poke on a muscle and it recreates their pain or something, you see a trigger point in that area, a palpable nodule, you can actually eliminate that with the dry needling, which is pretty neat. It's a pretty effective, and it's a powerful tool. Everybody uses it a little bit differently. There's different styles of needling and whatnot. I think that I've found, especially with my population, the best way to utilize it is for symptom management. It has other uses and other utilities, but I really like it for, if you have a recalcitrant tissue that's just still, it's kind of taking its time going through the healing process, or it's still generating pain, and you want to get past that, and you've kind of you're at the point where you want to do that manually. I think that that's a really good tool to use. So essentially what I'll do is I'll do the dry needling. It takes about 20, maybe 30 seconds per spot that I'm actually doing. It's an ineffable stimulus. It's something it's hard to describe. I think I had somebody a couple months ago that told me, that's described it the best that I've ever heard it, and he said that it was too amusing to be painful, which I thought was kind of funny.
So like it tickled or what?
Well, yeah. So sometimes people laugh, and I think it's because they're not expecting, what they don't know what to expect, and then it's something completely different anyway. So have you ever had it done to you?
No.
Yeah. So when you will at some point, I'm sure, and or if not, next time I see you, I'll just bust out my needles and we'll get to work. But when it, just keep that description in mind. It's actually pretty funny. When you notice it, you're like, that's exactly it right there. It's too amusing to be painful.
That's interesting.
And it's kind of funny, but I really like to use it. I've used it less just lately, just because I think that I want my patients to be able to do this stuff to manage their symptoms themselves. I don't want them dependent on me. I think that's a healthcare model that I'm not a fan of at all. Sure. I'll just say that, so I don't have to call anybody out. But yeah, I want people to be as independent of me as I can get, as they can get. And so the more I do the things that they can't do to themselves, the more dependent they are on me. So if I can get them to manage their own symptoms, then they can become empowered to then move on with their rehab. But I will use that when it's needed, and it is powerful. It's a pretty cool tool.
So what's the difference between that and like acupuncture?
Yeah, well, I'm not trained in acupuncture, but acupuncture it uses a very similar needle, if not an identical needle, and acupuncture uses predetermined meridian points on your body to restore chi or energy.
Oh, I see. So it's more spiritual or something, or?
Well, I think so. I think that there's a energy force that flows through your body according to the people who study acupuncture, and they have these meridian points in your body that manage it. I don't know too much beyond that, but I do know that there is literature actually in the acupuncture literature that some of these dry needling certification places use, and some research is even physical therapy research pulls from this literature. So it's pretty neat. But I do have some colleagues that are trained in just some form of acupuncture, because acupuncture is a very broad term if you really think about it. There's a lot of different forms of that as well. And so they've told me some things and some cool facts about it, but I'm not the person to ask, really.
All right. Yeah, no, I didn't know if you knew if it was like, okay, acupuncture does this and we do this, and that's the distinction.
Right. Yeah, and we're essentially trying to create that mechanical like, for instance, when I evaluate somebody, I know every therapist has their own approach. I have I call it like a myomechanical approach. I like to just say, okay, you can't move this way. Here's the muscles that would restrict that motion. Let's make sure it's a muscle, not a joint. Once you kind of created that, you're like, all right, you rule out the muscles that it can't be based on some other tests, and you figure it out. You're like, all right, now there's this muscle. Let's see if we can get into that muscle, find where the restriction is, and then we can get into that with the dry needling or some other manual work or maybe a stretch or whatever. Yeah. But that's how I go about things. Whereas I believe in acupuncture, they may be trying to I guess more heal the body from a systemic perspective, like you may have like a ear infection or something, or I don't know, and they're trying, but I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I'm not, because I'm not trained in it, but that's how dry needling would work from my end, is described earlier. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about, slightly different topic here, sure, about finding the proper advice. I guess mostly online is what I was kind of getting at here when it comes to fitness, nutrition, and healthcare. Working with Erica on Joy Energy Time here, I mean, we're, any business on earth now has to be super internet savvy and social media savvy. And I feel like, just starting that on my end, it's like everywhere I look, there's someone who claims to be some kind of an expert on something. And it's like, especially in fields like physical therapy or rehab or medicine or fitness or nutrition, you can get into a situation where you're paying for someone's advice and they really don't have any concrete credentials to speak of. And that's why I wanted to have you on, and also your colleagues, hopefully later on. You have 5 or 6 different certifications that say, hey, look, I'm an expert in this and this and this. So right. It's a shame to me when I see certain outlets online getting a whole lot of recognition, when there's people like you guys out there who really you should be just as, if not more so, popular with clients.
Oh yeah. And so that's actually pretty funny, because when we first started, we were like, we're very good at what we do, and we see these other people who may not be even credentialed to do what we do, much less as good as we are at it, but yet they have more of a following and more of an influence over. And really, that's what we want to do ultimately, is affect the people in our circles, right? And we want to influence these people in a positive way. I mean, that's what kind of gets us moving in the morning. And so that it at first we were trying to figure out, well, what are we not doing right? And really what it came down to is marketing. I think that if you can market yourself well and reach these people and spend your time doing those things, then you can get that following. So it doesn't, just because somebody has a following doesn't necessarily mean that they are good at what they do with what they claim to do. And it certainly doesn't mean that they're credentialed. So I think that this is an awesome question. That there's, as a consumer, you have to do your due diligence, right? So especially if you're about to hand somebody money and for their information they're providing, you have to understand they have to have demonstrated their value to you. And if if they've done that, you should look for their credentials, right? You don't have to know what all of these letters mean. If you don't know what they mean, a quick Google search can help, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, there's there's two things that I think you can do to really help vet the information that's coming to you, right? Well, one of them is fear mongering, right? And I think that if you can identify that, then you can really kind of weed out the people that may just be trying to fear you into buying their product or getting their service or paying for their information.
Right.
And again, without calling people out, you may see like giant red letters like come up on a YouTube video, saying like don't do this or whatever, or you may see like just clickbait or whatever. I don't know. You'll see people like scaring you into saying like if you're going to get extremely hurt if you do this, or these 5 foods wreak havoc on your gut. Like how many times have you seen that?
Right.
Or
eat this one thing to like help maintain your gut or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Like, you have to pay you for it. Oh, that's surprising.
Exactly. Yeah. So not sharing information for free is a big problem, right? I mean, you should be, if you are great at what you do and you really love what you do, you're putting out free content out there. That's like one of your big touch points with your consumers. You want to be able to show people that you not only know what you're doing, but you live what you're doing, right? I work out 5 times a week, and I have that content out there of me working out. I try and put some personal stuff out there on my social media to suggest that I not only am a good rehabilitation expert in the field of the strength sports, but I also am a competitive athlete in these strength sports. I'm not just someone who claims to be one or whatever. So people know that when they look at my social media. So that's what's important to me, and I think it should be important to the consumer that these people live that lifestyle and they're not fear mongering you, and they're putting out free information so that you can see and you can vet that information and know that this is the people that know what they're doing. That's number one. I think number two, and this might be a little tougher, but whenever you have the like basic rudimentary understanding of whatever the topic is that you're talking about, right? So let's say it's so you're watching a documentary on diabetes, right? Well, if you know, and then that documentary may make some outrageous claim. Well, if you know just the basic fundamental principles of diabetes, like what it is, they may describe it as something different, again, to fear monger you, right? But if you knew what it was, or at least just one thing about it, at least you can see a discrepancy between what they're telling you and what you know. And you don't have to be an expert for that to just raise a flag in your head, and say, maybe these people don't know exactly what they're talking about, or maybe I should be able to get another source of information first to double check this. But you can't do that if you're 100% ignorant to that subject. So just grabbing a textbook or doing like you're getting some information on that subject, is going to go a really, really long way for you. Just even the basic understandings of strength and conditioning can help you with regards to physical therapy. Like you might have somebody telling you your hip flexors are tight and that's why you have this issue, and it's like, well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense because that issue has nothing to do with hip extension, and then so you can kind of draw those conclusions. Otherwise, you're just like immediately sold on anything that's brought your way. You can relate it to buying a car too if you want to, but it's the exact same concept.
Yeah.
I think those are the two things that I would consider. I'll leave it at that for now. So
yeah. No, that's fine. I think it's important to point out too, because I know most of our listeners are healthcare providers, and it's like you may think that I guess the majority of what you should know on these topics, fitness, nutrition, and rehab and all that, but I can tell you right now that like you just don't. Like there's so much more information than like you actually think is out there. Like if you're a nurse, or if you're some other kind of healthcare provider, I don't know, we have loads of them who listen, but these kinds of professionals like Mike, those are the people that you really have to just seek advice from, because they might just blow your mind. They might just completely drop a knowledge bomb on you that'll just like send you into next week. Like, so really, really look for those people if you need them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also that when you already are working with somebody in this area, you may you may not get the results that you want, right? And that might be a good red flag too, or a yellow flag or whatever. I think it's important to understand that physical therapists, dietitians, personal trainers, strength coaches, I mean, as you know, we have a great deal of autonomy within our professions.
Right.
And there are many different treatment techniques and approaches that we can use to reach the desired goals, and that type of equifinality, right? That doesn't that basically suggests that just because one approach doesn't work doesn't mean that another won't. So I think that if you do your due diligence, you move on, you find the people with the right credentials. There's people that out there that can help you. So if you're seeing if any kind of healthcare provider right now, or if you're paying for some sort of service right now and it's not working for you, you don't have to settle for not working for you, right? You can move on to the next person and find and vet those people and the information they provide, and then get to what get the results that you want and you need. You shouldn't ever have to settle in this line in the health professions,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's move on a little bit
Sure.
about so at Joy Energy Time, we're all about trying to help healthcare providers reduce and or prevent burnout related to their work, or I guess to a lesser extent in their personal lives as well. I think a big part of that is finding your niche in your specific profession. And that's something that you guys have done really well. You guys have taken what you love, you've turned it into a business, and you're super happy while you're doing it. And that can go, for any healthcare provider position. There's so many things we can do that, it's a shame if people kind of just slug it out in a situation that they're not totally stoked about being in. Yeah, talk a little bit about your journey as far as that.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I'm very passionate about physical therapy in general, and I love it. But as you know, physical therapy is a very broad profession. I mean, there's many different settings you can work in with like on one axis. Like you can work with like the neonatal unit and the NICU, whatever, or you can work with like pediatrics, and then you can work in like sports and geriatrics and skilled nursing facilities and whatnot. And on the other axis, you can work in burn units and neuro ICUs and all this stuff. And we're all over, and we play a different role in everybody's life depending on which setting we work in. So as if any physical therapists are wondering, I mean, the first step you want to do is you want to find which setting works best for you. And I mean, we have mutual friends who have none of those settings worked well for them, but we recognize that there's a lot of services that we can provide to either other physical therapists or people wanting to be in businesses and things like that. And so, or whatever, I mean, you find what you're good at. And I think you had Dr. Kestenbaum on your show not too long ago. Yeah, and you were interviewing him, and he basically said that he's like, I just went into PT school to learn anatomy. Like I just had a general interest.
Just wanted to learn the information. Didn't really care that much about actually treating. And he's doing really awesome work over at Covalent Careers. If you're a healthcare provider, go check them out.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? And so he found what he loved to do, and he created his own company in order to help people find the jobs that they need and stuff like that. And that's just great, And so the first step is finding the setting you want to work in and the location, and making sure that everything outside of your job actually is in a good standing, because that definitely seeps into these aspects of your life.
Yeah, that's true too.
So that's the first step, I think. The second step, well, you want to, with regards to burning out, I'll tell you a little bit more about me. I mean, I'm very passionate about physical therapy, and I went into an orthopedic residency, and it was very time consuming. It was hard, because then I also took on another job at the same time, working with a lot of athletes outside on my only free time that I had. And so I was pretty much living just being a therapist. I had just moved to Charlotte. I hadn't even been to like anything that Charlotte had to offer. I hadn't experienced, and I was there for like a year and a half at that point because I was just working so much. And I was still okay. And then when I got out of that residency, I started working just temporarily at another clinic. And that clinic was with a lot of like an older population. I remember a lot of lot of the older population has a lot of memory issues and things like that. And I remember like it was just really, really hard trying to tell them and get the information across to them that this is your home exercise program. I need you to do this. And I just remember having, and it was a long commute and all this other stuff. And I just remember being so burnt out that I almost quit. And I was not okay with it. I was very upset at the time because I didn't know. I thought I was like, I spent all this time learning this and doing this, and this is going to be my job. And I didn't realize that all I had to do was find the right setting, the right position. And sure enough, I went over to another location, and I'm in currently, and it's amazing. I have a great time there. Everything's awesome. I'm working with athletes and a lot of or recreational athletes and general orthopedic people conditions and stuff. I mean, I think that goes a long way with regards to finding your niche from there. I mean, we basically, as the Charlotte athlete, we recognized that we wanted to be working with the strength sport athletes, right? This is what we wanted to do. We wanted to narrow it down even further. So then we basically were like, all right, well, let's become sports specialists, right? So we did that. We became sports specialists on top of being orthopedic specialists. We got the advanced education to understand and like separate us from the rest of the people and the healthcare providers out there. And so, I'd be lying if I said it didn't take a lot of work, but everything we did was for a higher purpose. And I think that's what you got to have, that kind of foresight moving forward. It's like, all right, well, what do I want to do? And once you answer that question, what is the barrier to my success? And sometimes it's yourself, right? And that happened many times when I asked that question. Right. And sometimes it's just the setting that you're in, or maybe it's another aspect of your life, But there's something there's got to be an answer to that question. I think that the world always makes sense, right? And if you can't make sense of it, then it's your model of it that's not making sense. It's not the world that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think some people feel stuck. If they're in a situation that they don't like, it's like for some reason they feel like if they move, it's either not going to change, or it'll be like worse or just as bad. So that's like you talked about like maybe your perception of it is not right. I mean that's part of it too. And I'm not sure who said this. I don't know. My wife listens to a lot of other podcasts and reads a lot of like professional development, stuff about running a business. And it's like someone said like, as long as you figure out like what your goal is professionally and personally, it's not something that you just like become. It's like you like every day, if you take even a very small step towards that goal, like sending an email to someone who you really admire, or starting an LLC, or writing down 5 things that you want to be able to do this time next year. It's like it's those super small steps that it's like eventually those steps will get you to where you want to be. And it's like if you're a physical therapist who's like I don't like what I'm doing, step 1 is figuring it out, and then step 2 is just making little moves every day, a little bit, and eventually you'll get there.
Exactly. You have to find ways. So the step 1 is finding out what it is that you're trying to do, and that might not be an easy step, right?
No,
I mean, you got to figure out.
That's the hardest step sometimes.
Yeah. It requires a lot of like introspection and reflection. You have to really figure out what is it that I'm good at, what can I provide, and what do I like to do, and what's and then once you have that answer, even if it's just a general direction, you can start moving the needle forward in that direction. And people think that these things are so small. It's like, oh yeah, but you have these days, like if every day you move the needle forward, that is the biggest win ever. We're right now, we just had a meeting about an e-commerce meeting with the Charlotte athlete doctors, and we moved the needle forward a few clicks today, and that was huge for us. And we respect that because we've been doing it every day for so long. And as we reflect and look back, we're like, wow, like 3 years ago, we would not even have thought that we'd be in this position. And 2 years ago, we see that over time, moving the needle forward every single day, just a little bit, goes a really long way. And it really separates yourself from other people. And it's a fun journey when you're moving towards doing something that you want to do. And it doesn't happen every day. Some days, you wake up and step 1 just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And whatever, but you move past it because there's another day. There's always tomorrow. And you come over and you do it again, right? Yeah. I can't get over that. I think you said that perfectly. That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, the phrase "you only fail if you quit" is really important to me. It's like, failure is something that you're going to have all the time, especially if you're going to try to do something bigger than what you're doing right now. And it's like, failure isn't the thing. It's quitting that thing. That's the end. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Failure is feedback. That's huge, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about something clinical here. Energy balance equation. What is it? How can you tie it to burnout on the job? And kind of just talk a little bit about it.
Okay. Yeah. So the energy balance equation. Well, let's take a step back. So what is energy in general, right? And I think energy is the power derived from the chemical processes that take place in our body, and that allows us to go about our daily activities, right? So how much energy you have is predominantly governed by this energy balance equation in your body. If you associate running out of energy with running out of fuel, then you can start to see how this can contribute to the feeling of like getting burnt out, right? So a very crude representation of the energy balance equation is energy in versus energy out. Consuming calories will give us energy in. Exercising and movements, amongst many other things, will expend energy out. Both sides of this equation have multiple variables that make this more complex than how I'm describing it now, but that's the general idea. I think that you don't need to. So put it this way: if in healthcare, we're always trying to, we have to look the part, right? So as physical therapists, we have to be fit. And we're probably in these settings, or we're, most of the therapists that I know are either like CrossFit athletes or bodybuilders or powerlifters, or they just do recreational exercise, but they all have we understand the value of having a goal, and moving towards that goal requires sometimes manipulating this energy balance equation, right? And I think so the number, so like let's say you have an aesthetic goal, you're trying to look different, right? You're trying to lose some body fat. Well, that's going to require you manipulating that equation. You're going to need to be at what I would call a caloric deficit. Right. That means you're eating less calories than you're expending, right? And so when you're at that deficit, you're essentially you're depriving yourself of energy. So your body's using the stored forms of energy that you have. Eventually, what happens is that you start to become irritable, right? If anybody's ever dieted for an extended period of time, you'll know that you're not fun to be around, and it's a huge stressor on your body that you're adapting to. So what's important about that, I think, especially with regards to getting burnt out, is that you can mitigate these stressors and you can actually improve your outcomes and your results if you did it appropriately. What I mean by that is a lot of people try to like, let's say they'll say, okay, on Monday I'm going to start my diet and I'm going to start my exercise, right? And they eat salads Monday through Friday, right? And they work out every single day. And because they made this drastic change with both their input and their output, they're at this giant caloric deficit. They effectively lose 10 to 20 pounds, right, in a week, and then they end up just bombing, crashing out. That's the extreme version of this. And then they can't do it anymore because it's not feasibly sustainable. And then or they can do it, but it requires sheer willpower, right? Yeah. And that's even more dangerous sometimes. So what's important there is understanding, well, what's the right, how can I do this effectively for a longer period of time? And the truth, my answer to that is that it depends. I think that you have to find a diet that works well for you. All diets are essentially the same in the sense that they all have these two main components. You have to eat mindfully, right? And you have to be at a deficit, a caloric deficit, right? So if you can do those two things, it doesn't matter what macronutrient you're manipulating or if you're fasting for periods of time or whatever the case is, just do something that you can adhere to that works well, right? Yeah. And then do that. The other thing is to do that at a rate that you lose maybe like 1 pound a week or something along those lines, right? But the slower you lose weight, the obviously the longer it'll take, but the more sustainable this will become. And so I think that the burnout, a lot of people that may be dieting or dieting too hard or for too long even, end up having that seep over into we talked about this earlier, how just one aspect of your life can seep over into the other.
Mm-hmm.
When I write my training for my remote athletes that are in other countries and states, I don't see these people, so I need to monitor their fatigue. So I monitor how hungry they are. I have them fill out like rating scales on how hungry they are, how long they're sleeping for, what their quality of sleep is, their how heavy the weight feels, how determined they are to get into the gym and whatnot. And we get an objective number from these things because all of those aspects of their life and their health are going to relate to another, and that's how I can measure their fatigue. And a lot of times you can see it, like, maybe their numbers are fine, but their fatigue is through the roof because they're not sleeping or whatever the case is. So yeah, the energy balance equation is one of the most powerful weapons that we have in our arsenal when it comes to I guess one of the most powerful weapons that we can manipulate, right? That we have when it comes to meeting our aesthetic goals and stuff like that. But at the same time, consequently, it's going to be one of the biggest, most influencing things when it comes to burning out, right? It is our literal fuel, right? That we are now depriving ourselves of. So if we can see it that way, then you can see this out. You can really see how you can just run out of fuel quickly and how you can burn out. So I hope that's like a good general overview of it. I didn't want to get too far in depth. I could talk about it forever. But
no, for sure. I think a lot of times we get the question of how do I get more energy? And it's like it's basically an impossible question to answer just by talking with someone on the internet, because you'd have to talk about their activity level, their intake, their sleep, their work, their stress level, all these personal factors and all these things. And it's like, well, I can't just tell you do this one thing and you'll have more energy, because it's not necessarily going to be the case. You know what I mean?
Right. I think if you some people need to ask better questions, and when that's the case, it's like, well, why? You should ask a question right back. What is it that when are you not having this energy? Is it always, or is there just a specific moment where you're having a problem? Once you hone that in to being okay, they need more energy, at the end of the workday or whatever the case is. The truth is that food is going to provide them that energy, and that's actually a good question, because with regards to supplements and stuff. So you can buy, a lot of people think that okay, well, maybe I can just drink a coffee or have some sort of tea or whatever, and that's going to provide me more energy. And the truth is that caffeine does a good job of raising your heart rate and your alertness and whatnot, but that's just burning the energy that you currently have quicker. That's not giving you more energy unless there is sugar in that drink that you have, or some sort of something with a caloric burden, right? So unless you're eating some sort of calories with the caffeine that you're intaking, then you're not really getting new or more energy. You're just burning through what you have quicker, which then can be a recipe for being burnt out quicker later, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think with that, when someone says, well, what can I do to get more energy? The effective answer is, well, you can eat more, right? But you would need to tone that down or to a better question, so then you can really effectively answer and help give them the answer that they need, because you can just eat more to get more energy, but it might be an aspect somewhere else in their life that, they're not defying thermodynamics. They're not going to be like, I'm eating and my energy is just blah. I'm not utilizing the energy that I have in my body or whatever the case is. And it's so there's a problem somewhere, and you can figure that out. It may require a back and forth, but that's the idea, is that you have to kind of, like you mentioned, you may have to move into other aspects of their life and ask them some good questions.
I'm going to refer them to you. How's that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think absolutely that would be a great idea. I'll take it on. I'll take that question on almost every time. I love to answer those questions. And sometimes when people are dieting and stuff, sometimes people come to me, and you'd be surprised. They've been dieting for a really long time, and their calories are effectively almost gone, and they're surprised that they don't have a lot of energy and whatnot. And I'm like, well, you should add some calories back in. And sure enough, we add calories back in, and it changes their life. They feel better, they're more energetic, and consequently they move more and burn more energy, so they don't end up actually gaining weight despite eating more calories. It's a crazy concept, but sometimes the advice is to eat more, and that actually improves the life of these people, and that's the answer that they need,
Yeah.
And then what to eat is a whole nother question, and we can get into that if you want. But there's huge. There's a lot to be said about the nutritional aspect of this stuff.
Yeah, we could have a massive episode on just nutrition, really.
Okay.
I mean, we've had a couple nutritionists on, well, at least one, and actually she's gonna be she's gonna have a module in one of her courses. She's really knowledgeable.
Awesome.
Anyway, so we're kind of winding down here. I wanted to get into like where can people find you on the internet? Like what outlets are you on? What's your email? All that stuff.
Okay, yeah. So my email is mike@thecharlotteathlete.com. My Instagram is at Masi Fitness. It's Masi _fitness, because there's
Someone else.
chicks in Australia that apparently stole my name and thought about it before I did. So yeah, there's that, and then there's Facebook, which is each Facebook, it's at Masi Fitness on there as well, and let's see what else. Oh, my website is thecharlotteathlete.com/Mike, or you can just go on there and you can peruse all the providers. We all have some great content on there. So we're on that as well. Yeah. I don't think I have a YouTube channel that I've been starting to really mess with now, because a lot of my digital products and stuff are they utilize YouTube, and so I've been uploading a lot of videos on there. So you'll see videos of how to do certain exercises and things on the YouTube channel, and that's again Masi Fitness. So you can find it there as well. There's a lot of you can probably Google review there's Google reviews and Facebook reviews if you want testimonials and stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch of information out there. If you just Google Masi Fitness, it'll come up. Or you might get two Australian chicks that either way, it's a good. You'll have something cool to look at. So,
gosh, yeah. I mean, for the listeners, I haven't talked to them yet, but I'd like to interview the rest of the Charlotte Athlete as well. Because they're just an awesome resource for everything related to these topics that we're talking about. So I'm hoping to make it almost like a podcast series, like a Charlotte Athlete series or something like that. So, keep an eye out for that. You guys are doing CEUs as well, because, a lot of our people listening are, they might be physical therapists who may or may not be in the Charlotte area. What do you guys, what's your next one, and what kinds of stuff do you guys do, really quick?
Oh man, well, so we have, this whole thing is started as what we would call the never-ending lecture series, right? So we had these 12 original lectures, and as you can tell, I don't shut up about this stuff, so I can talk about it forever. So we can literally have a never-ending lecture series. So we had 12 topics that then moved into 15 and then 20 and whatever, but 12 original topics that we started creating lectures on. We realized that after we got through we completed 7 different lectures and whatnot, that with regards to the continuing education, it works best to just do 2 at a time per year, for various reasons. And so that's what we did. We have exercise considerations for the upper quarter and lower quarter for the major orthopedic injuries, and we also have that for the spine. But with upper and lower quarter, we put on this year at multiple areas, and it's mainly at the moment it's for group exercise instructors and physical and personal trainers, and other physical therapists too that are interested in learning, how we operate with all these things, and even we just mentioned how we integrate some of the exercises from the strength sports into these things, and how we kind of meld the two worlds of rehabilitation and strength and conditioning, Mm-hmm. So we have some therapists that come, and some ex athletes and stuff, like football players and whatnot, that come to these things, and so it's fun. So we do that, and then we also put on more clinics and whatnot, where we kind of go over how to squat, how to bench press, how to deadlift. Awesome. And those are more hands-on, and that's a lot of fun, because seeing somebody who just learns how to, like, who's been squatting for, a decade or whatever, and then you kind of be like, you make one little change and they're like, wow, and it's like an epiphanizing moment for them. I mean, that's a lot of fun. They're like, this is what this is what I was supposed to be doing this whole time. And then and you get a lot of great feedback from these things. We're constantly taking the feedback and refining the lecture or refining the clinic, and it's just it's a really good time. We love doing that kind of stuff. So we have basically a whole bunch of different lectures. We've only effectively put on a few of them, or put a few of them into the lecture series. We've only put a few of them on so far, but we're doing that at multiple locations. So if there's anybody out there listening that wants to be a host location for some of this, or if they have trainers that they currently employ that they think they want to provide continuing education for, that's a group of sports doctors that are a good resource for them, that would be a great idea. So we have a few people reaching out to us. We get back to them. We tell them, look, we'll put this lecture on for your trainers, and it's a great time.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great, and people should definitely look you up if they're in the area. Yeah. I'm gonna wrap up here. Stay on the line after I stop the recording. But I just had Mike Masi on, expert on fitness, nutrition, rehab, sports, vocabulary. Really just an expert in the field, and I'm really happy to have him on. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you want more, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Also, share this episode with your friends, and I would be so grateful. If you feel inspired, leave a review on iTunes with an honest comment and/or what you'd like to hear more of, so you can help me out on my journey in delivering meaningful content. Thanks, mis amores.